Hello, fellow Rebel Capitalists. Hope you're well. I'm here with my good buddy, Greg Mannarino. Dude, it has been a minute, and I cannot wait to get back into all the things that we need to talk about. There's a lot going on right now, that's for sure. Let's just start off by you explaining what on earth is going on with these crazy markets, these crazy big governments, and insane central banks.
Wow, I could probably sit here for the next, 24 hours just going over some of that stuff.
Yeah, I wanted to just throw you that to see your head explode.
Let's start off with, I don't know, man. What are we experiencing here? Again, it's the same mechanism that's keeping this freak show market propped up. It's artificially suppressed rates, it's currency devaluation, people are getting sucked dry. Wealth is getting pushed up to the 1 or 2%. It's not going to stop until it does. So we take advantage of this across the board. That's all I could say. Look, man, I think this is in some ways, it's the gift that keeps on giving to people who understand where opportunities are. And I think people like you and me are really out here doing the best that we possibly can in this twisted freak show environment to enlighten people. I say, look, man, this is what you got to do. Period, the freaking end. It's not that hard. And, for you guys like you and me and people who are in this, immersed in it, I wish I wasn't as immersed as I am, honestly, because it's freaking me out. But look, man, this people need to look at this as, okay, look, things are bad everywhere around the world with the global economy getting systematically wiped out, the middle class extinction level event that we're in here. But again, what does that mean? It means if that's going on and we know it, right, that means there's opportunity in other places. And really, that's what I'm all about, taking the system, flipping it around and find a way that works for, us. Because if we don't take action, we are going to be forced to succumb to this thing that they have going on. It's not going to stop. It's been going on for a very, very long time. The mechanism here of currency purchasing power destruction and artificially suppressed rates is a wrecking machine for the global economy. It's a wrecking machine for the middle class. And we're going to get more of it. We're going to get more of this around the world. It's unfortunate, but understanding that allows us to say, okay, if this is happening, what can we do about it? Because that's really what I think the people that follow.
I want the viewers to notice you are saying that this is bad for the global economy. This is bad for the middle class. You didn't necessarily say this was bad for the stock market. And I'm just pointing that out because a lot of people conflate the two. That if the stock market's at all-time highs, well, oh my gosh, Greg, I don't know what you're talking about. The economy is booming. Obviously, look at the S&P 500. But what people have to do is they have to disentangle that and realize we're talking about two completely separate things. And especially as of the last, call it 10, 15 years, I would argue there's often an inverse correlation between the stock market asset prices and the real economy, not just in the United States, but globally.
Dude, you nailed it to the wall. I've been explaining to people, I've been showing people this for years. I said, this is the economy and this is the market. The gap between these two is going to get wider and wider and wider with the promise of easy money, with artificially suppressed rates and currency purchasing power destruction. There's no connection whatsoever between the economy and the market, as you clearly explained. It's too easy to see this, but there are many who believe exactly what you said. It's the illusion of the market. People say, whoa, S&P 500, record highs, near record highs. We must be booming. It's fake. We all know that. At least I hope the people that follow our work have been brought up to speed. And I've been explaining to people that the faster that they can crater the world economy, the potentially higher the stock markets are going to go. And I say potentially because we're running up against a wall. The law of diminishing returns is in play here. Yeah. And doing the same thing here, it's eventually going to not work anymore. And that more effort to keep rates suppressed, more easy money, more currency devaluation is going to become toxic, which it already is. And that's what we're seeing around the world. People can't survive. The 1 and 2% is loving this stuff. This is where they want to be here. The Cantillon effect here, the wealth transfer on a grand scale, what we're seeing. It's just not going to stop until, again, we get some sense of reality. And reality is, again, people always looking at the stock market. The stock market, okay, no, they're looking in the wrong place. They're going to follow the debt market. The debt market is a driver of everything that's happening. The stock market itself has become nothing but a derivative of the debt market. As a matter of fact, I will tell people straight out, and I've been, that there is not one single asset class, at least in my opinion today, that has a real price discovery mechanism behind it whatsoever. It's all just, everything is based on what's happening here in the debt market. And that's a big
when you
problem.
talk about the debt market, are you talking about corporate spreads, or are you talking
No. I'm talking about government debt. So what's central, and also the currency as a unit of debt. Yeah, you can't separate the two, in my opinion.
Okay.
What's going on here is you have this mechanism of central banks who have fulfilled their goal, for the most part, to be the number one issuers and buyers of debt. They're issuing debt through one door via issuing currency, and they're buying it back through government debt here. And this is a vortex of inflation, and it's spinning faster and crazier. And that's the real issue. And no one's being told this. I mean, no politician is going to explain it to them. No central banker obviously is going to explain it to them. And people don't know. They're left like, flying in the wind here, being told where to look, what to focus on, and obviously it's some massive psyop going on, and it's not going to change, unfortunately, for people who are looking for some kind of a saving grace here. It's too bad, unfortunately.
On that note, Greg, the saving grace, what are you using as a compass, let's say, to navigate these markets when, in my view, there are more unknowns going into 2025 than any time I can remember, with the exception of, we'll call it the cerveza sickness. So it is true in March of 2020, there were a lot more unknowns. That's a given. But right now, with the exception of that, I don't know how to use any game theory. I don't know how this plays out. I know that we'll probably have more volatility, but I don't know if that's upside, downside. I mean, whether you like Trump or hate him, the bottom line is his MO is to come out there and just kind of the bull in the china shop. And that's one of his greatest negotiating tools. But that means that if you're a market participant, you don't know what he's going to say tomorrow. You don't know what he's going to say the next day, or more importantly, you don't know what the policies are going to be. So how on earth do you set up your portfolio? Again, what do you use as that compass or that North Star to try to navigate all of these unknowns?
Me, I go by the old Wall Street adages, the debt market is always right, even though we know it's fake and it's being artificially suppressed here. I look at the benchmark 10-year yield. For the most part. I really do. I don't even care what the stock market is doing. I first look at what's happening with regard to the debt market. I know the yield curve has been all over the place. I don't even look at it. I don't. I look at the benchmark 10-year yield, and then I look at the dollar on a relative strength basis. And that's going to dictate to us literally where the stock market is going to go. If you're looking at just the stock market, it's pretty much clear to me now. I sincerely believe.
So is it like the inverse of the 10-year treasury yield based on your analysis? So if the 10-year treasury yield is going up, then the stock market's going to go sideways, if not down. If the 10-year treasury yield, is it that?
What the market wants to see is obviously a lower rate environment here. That's nothing else matters to this market here anymore. And obviously currency devaluation on the back of that. We don't have a real market in any way. It's not about forward guidance anymore. It's not about PE ratios anymore. None of that stuff that used to matter in the old days. Throw it all out, flush it down the freaking toilet. It's all about, it doesn't even matter, like you said, with the economy either. The faster they destroy this thing, the higher the market potentially could go. But again, we got to keep our eye. All I look at is the debt market, where cash is going. If cash is being pushed into the debt market via whatever mechanism, central banks are buying it all, which is their goal. It's going to, again, try to open up that window for cash to make its way into the stock market and foster the illusion of prosperity. Because as you said, very rightly so, people look at the market and say, hey, look at the Dow, it's doing great. And don't even bother looking at the S&P 500 or the broader market. It's insane. But that's it, man. That's my and then I try to obviously put a lot of other things together in my head. With regard to the geopolitical issues that are going on, I think it's all a smoke screen, as it always is, distraction, a flurry of executive orders, and people don't even have the chance to evaluate them. It's interesting. I guess they're relying on someone else is going to take care of them, which is always ends up in bad. But with regard to the market, man, look, it seems too easy to me. I think they're not. I believe we're going to enter into an even greater phase moving forward of central banks buying it all, currency devaluation. Now, we don't have a single world leader except for maybe the BRICS nations calling for what we actually do need, and that is a higher rate environment. We need Paul Volcker to return back to the system and start to raise rates, because we are in a very bad spot. If you look at the federal funds rate right now and the 10-year yield, there's a crossover that has occurred, which we have not seen since 1972, where the inflation rate was about the same as it is now. And then we skyrocketed from 3% to 15% in less than a decade. Paul Volcker took action in 1979 to vastly start increasing rates, and that brought inflation down. When you hear this kind of a story out of Elizabeth Freak Show Warren and President Trump now on the same page with we need lower rates and we need them now, there's a problem. And that mechanism here is, again, it's not going to work to bring down inflation. I don't care what they're cutting from government spending. We're going to see debts and deficits balloon moving forward on a scale we're not going to believe. And I think that people's heads are going to spin around like the freaking exorcist when they see what it's going to be like to maintain their current standard of living. Unfortunately, we need action here. We need something to be done with the monetary system. And unfortunately, we're not getting it at all. All we're getting here is a massive, potentially across the spectrum of a massive bank deregulation. And I think that's a problem. I believe there has to be parameters. We know it happens. What does Wall Street do when they don't have to listen to anybody anymore? Well, we end up in a situation like 2008. Now, the gravity of it and the reality of it is the whole entire financial system is insolvent. It's in a perpetual deficit, can never be filled, unfortunately. And these banks, they have negative balance sheets. There's no doubt about it. And that's going to present a major problem down the pipe, because who's going to pay for it? You think they're going to pay for it? No, we're going to pay for it, as we always do. It's a shame.
So I just wonder if the Fed can raise interest rates. So what I mean by that is they just dropped by 100 basis points, and the 10-year Treasury yield went up by 100 basis points because the market perceives that as potentially higher growth and inflation expectations. So I'm thinking, let's just say the Fed were to start hiking rates. Well, does the market then perceive that as lower inflation and growth expectations to the point where the 10-year Treasury yield would go down? And, it's just a weird, because people like to think the Fed controls the whole entire curve to a certain degree. And then they like to think that the Fed totally controls the front end of the curve. But I don't know that they do, because I think, like, as an example, right now, if I'm Jerome Powell, I know the 10-year Treasury yield went up by 100 basis points when I was trying to bring it down. I know
an interesting paradox. It absolutely
so it's like, is he pausing because he wants to? Or is he pausing because the 10-year Treasury is punking him into pausing? I don't know.
I think, unfortunately, what we have here is a situation where the central bank is more concerned with where the market is going to go than even inflation at this point. And we've been lied to upside down, backwards, and sideways about this being temporary and transitory and whatever. But the fact of the matter is, man, we heard from the Bank of England, who said, first of all, this is yield curve control. And we're not being told, it's seriously going on here. They're managing the yield curve, trying to appease the market into thinking things are going to be okay. But the fact of the matter is, in my opinion, we've clearly reached the point of no return. Nothing can be fixed without something drastic happening. And we got to return purchasing power to the currency. To return purchasing power to the currency means that no matter what the fallout may be, the central banks need to start raising rates, not lowering rates, which is nothing but going to wreak havoc like it's been on the currency around the world. And who's paying for it? Well, it's the middle class, as always here. People can't survive in this environment. In my opinion, this is no comedy of errors that got us here. This is no deliberate. There's no way that people like you and people like me and a lot of other people have been out here saying this is going to happen and that's going to happen, and then it does, and then these institutions, these big lofty things here, they didn't know it either. You got to be kidding me, man. Of course they know what we know, and they don't want the people to know it. There's always stuff that's been hidden from the wise, the prudent, the babe, and the sucker since for thousands of years. It's not going to stop, and people, unfortunately, in my opinion, are being led. They're leading themselves into their own demise because they don't know what's happening or why. It's always the same story here. And then again, it comes down to the people, looking to a particular individual, whoever it might be, around the world that's going to bring them out into some other place in society, a utopian place. It ain't happening, unfortunately. People need to take action for themselves, and that's where we come in. Honestly, I believe this is true. You and I and people like us have been on the cutting edge of this, bro, for a long freaking time.
Yeah, and another thing too, Greg, I'm thinking about it from the standpoint of the central bank, because you said that they need to raise rates to stabilize the dollar. And what you're talking about there, obviously, is stabilizing the dollar versus goods and services in the United States. Yeah. But they've painted themselves into a corner, right? Because if you actually think that through, let's say that Jerome Powell did agree with you, and he said, okay, Greg, I'm going to go ahead and hike rates up to, let's just say 6%. Okay, that's fine. And let's just forget about what happens along the curve. But what does that do to the dollar versus other currencies? You've got an extreme interest rate differential there, which probably in the short term, midterm, makes the DXY go to 120. 130, something like that. And then what does that do to Japan? What does that do to all these other?
What does it do to corporate profits? You could go on and on. The fallout.
And the point there is that it explodes other economies, which, I realize people say, well, America first. But look, if all of these other economies around the world are collapsing, I assure you that is going to negatively impact the United States. If you're talking about manufacturing, who the hell are we going to manufacture? Who are we going to send these goods to if their economies are in rubble? Because of the dollar wrecking ball, let's say, if the Fed brought rates up. So I'm just throwing that out there as kind of
it's a very, very good point. But here's the situation. We are already leading ourselves or being led down a rat hole, which is going to make the meltdown, the global meltdown of 08 look like a walk in the park, right. Eating an ice cream cone on a nice summer day. So I believe that extreme action needs to be taken here against these central banks who are running us all into the ground collectively by design. And yes, there's going to, no matter how you look at it, and it's just too easy to understand. There's going to be fallout over here, or there's going to be fallout over there. Yeah, right, and without the America first, and we got to do this. I understand all that's all well and good and perfect, and returning some purchasing power to the currency would help we, the people here on the ground floor, instead of the 1% and 2% as being this wealth transfer effect by the cancel-on effect and the dollar devaluation here and the trickle down, however you want to look at it. Drastic measures need to be taken, because no matter how you want to slice it, we're going to end up in a worst case scenario with this debt hyperbubble meltdown. How it's going to play out is too simple, in my view. We're going to eventually see the complete opposite of what we've been witnessing here, with rates being artificially suppressed. And the debt market at one point is going to say enough is enough. And you were talking about what was going on here with the 10-year yield. Okay. I believe that we're going to end up seeing a scenario here where, and this is not going to be by accident either. We're going to get an uncontrolled sell-off in the debt market, a spiking of bond yields around the world very, very rapidly. Everyone runs to the door at the same time, as they always do, which is going to put enormous pressure on stock markets of the world, the economy of the world. And this is not even the half of it. The real bigger issue is the flow of credit through the markets, of the world markets. Debt market meltdown.
Or lack of credit.
Well, the lack
what you're talking about is
of like, for example, a credit freeze, a lockup situation, which was really the issue in 08. And it's amazing. Not many people understand why was Ben Bernanke rushed in before 11 carrying representative said, if we don't start pumping trillions of dollars or into the billions into the economy, we won't have an economy, not a market, an economy, because he understood that interbusiness lending was stopping.
Yeah,
So
liquidity,
we're going to
right?
end up in that same kind of situation, either by their own hand or somebody with a set of, you know what I'm talking about here, gets in here and says, look, we need to take drastic action. And yes, and there would be a massive fallout across a lot of things. In the market, we would be nowhere where we are now. This market is built on oceans of debt, and that's all it is. That's supported and has created distortions that are immense. Even for someone like myself who does nothing but study this stuff, it's hard for me to get my head around. So we don't know where's the bottom. The bottom is today in the Dow. I don't know. Maybe it's 8,000. That's probably reality. Somewhere's around. Could be lower than that.
And
We
what you're
don't know
talking
where the
about, we
bottom
don't have
actually
that
is.
because we don't have that price discovery.
There's no price.
You
Exactly.
know
There's
where the
none
bottom is,
anymore.
where the top
Zero.
is.
Poof. Gone. Magic.
Right. Is that proverbial hall of mirrors that you're trying
Yeah, pretty much.
to navigate there? You know, the more I study this stuff, Greg, the more I realize, especially now, I don't know that this is applicable during, over decades, but I think right now it's just all about narrative. And you can sit there, to your point earlier, the fundamentals don't matter. You think a PE ratio matters to the market right now, or the Schiller index, or what is it, the CAPE ratio? Absolutely. You think the Buffett indicator matters to market participants? Look, fart coins at 2 billion. You think the Buffett indicator or fundamentals matter? I mean, come on, who are you trying to kid? But I think what does matter at the end of the day is narrative. And I try to ask myself, when does the narrative change, or even how does it change? And I think the way it changes is when the data is so egregious or is so obvious that the market has that aha moment, or it's like the kids, saying that the emperor is wearing no clothes. Another example I call it the Biden moment, right? When, remember prior to the debate with Trump, how the mainstream media was trying to get you to believe that Joe Biden was sharp as a tack. And remember that? And they're doubling and tripling and quadrupling down. And if Greg Mannarino is out there saying that Joe Biden is an idiot or has dementia or whatever it is, then he is just obviously spreading misinformation. And we can put him in the category of the alt-right, as this disparaging comment. And then what happens is you have that debate, and it's so obvious that the mainstream media even has to admit it, backpedal. They never admit that they're wrong, but they admit that, that this guy's going senile. And it's like, you have to have that Biden moment in the markets where the narrative changes, but I just don't know when it comes, and I don't know necessarily how you cross that line in the sand.
I believe eventually it's everything is being dictated again by debt market action to the market. I don't even think the market cares about anything. So they know the data is already all fake, all fugazi one way or the other. And with regard to the narrative, I don't think the market cares. The market is all about easy money. That's all it cares about. When the market actually understands that it's not going to come, and I don't, look, I think, again, as I said, it's going to be a moment of when central banks say this is it, we're about to pull the plug on all this is a wealth transfer effect from the masses right up to the 1% and 2%ers, and that's what we're seeing. And the grand finale is going to be the debt market meltdown, of course, when all the big wigs get out of the market, as they always do. People need to raise their awareness and start focusing on the drivers of everything. And again, to me, it just comes down to looking at the 10-year yield, very basically, in the dollar index here. And then all the rest of it is kind of just like noise to me. I try to filter it all out. And then I just I try to get a feel. Look, I talk to a lot of people that work at the big institutions over there, and I try to talk to these people and get a feel for that, where their heads are at, what's going on over there, and I try to put all this stuff together, man, and say, okay, look, this is the most likely scenario moving forward. Right. I believe we're going to get an environment where the distortions are going to get much worse over the next several months here or whatever. And we'll see if
where do you think the money goes? So you're talking about, let's just say, the long end of the Treasury curve blowing out, them having this moment where everyone is just, it's like a hot potato, like Doug Casey says, and they're just selling not just treasuries, but they're selling all government debt.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that interest rate going up is going to make the stock market come down. But that means people are selling stocks and they're selling bonds at the exact same time. But where does that money go? Because in that environment, you probably, I'm assuming that would be an inflationary environment, maybe not, but you probably wouldn't want to be in cash. So does that money just go straight into gold and Bitcoin or real estate, or what do you think?
Well, this is how it's going to play out. If you look at how the mechanism works, the artificially suppressed rates, what it does is push cash into risk assets. So the scenario you just said will unfold exactly as you just outlined. Meltdown in the debt market, meltdown in the stock market. Now, cash doesn't grow little money wings and fly away into money heaven. It's just going to move it. When you have that environment where this window is open for cash to make its way into risk assets here, it has to be coming from other places it should be going into. In my opinion, it's commodities pretty much across the board. And in fact, cryptocurrencies as well. I've been telling people this for 1,000 years. So it's very simple to me to just realize the most likely places where this is going to go. Again, everyone's going to run to the door at the same time with regard to the debt market, with regard to the stock market. And that could cause a free fall scenario so fast and so rapid, because you know how this works. Let's say you want to get rid of XYZ. And you put in, a limit order. I'm willing to sell this, but I want this for it, a limit order, okay? And then all of a sudden, that your limit order isn't working, and then you got to go to a market order, take whatever it is, and everyone's going to run to the door at the same time. It's going to cause a precipitous drop. Yeah, right. And then cash will just move from one reality into another. Again, commodities, because these are real tangible things. And people might say, because I say, Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, they're not, Greg, these are not real tangible things. That's not really, I just believe that's where it's going to go, because it's too simple, especially in this environment where we're being bridged, it seems, into a cryptocurrency system, bank deregulation, merging with cryptocurrencies here. I think it's just a matter of time before we move to the full tokenization, but that's maybe a little bit down the line here. But that's just how it seems like it's going to play out to me. Artificially suppressed assets here. Gold, silver, platinum, palladium, silver is still my favorite asset in the world. But then again, you can see, I look at it like this too. With regard to, okay, Greg, it sounds good, but where is this eventually going to go with regard to the price of gold and silver? I just look at basic dynamics that have been in place since for 1,000 years, it seems to me, and that's the Dow gold ratio, gold silver ratio. We got to pick where we believe the bottom for the Dow is going to be. I believe we're going to get a 1-to-1 ratio. I've been telling people this for years with regard to the Dow gold. Dow gold 8,000, gold Dow 8,000 means gold 8,000, and it means with regard to silver. Okay, it could be 10-to-1 in a full-on meltdown scenario, but probably like 15-to-1. With regard to Bitcoin, could go to 1 million. I mean, I really don't know. I do believe in my heart that cryptocurrencies are going much higher down the line here. That's just how I take my take on it. Unfortunately, look, when this is all well and good, but the real issue is going to end up being the flow of debt or credit through the system. It's going to lock up, and they can't unlock it. They won't be, because last time, what did they do? They pumped the system with more cash to free up the credit market. But this time, the market will be locked up. So they have to say, okay, look, guys and girls, this is what has occurred, but we have a solution for you. And that's what they always do, problem, reaction, solution. And I really believe that's how it's going to play out. I can't see it another way. And I don't believe that, like I said earlier, and I find it hard that anyone could believe that this is just by accident why we're here, why these things are the way they are. It just seems too evident to me that all of it it's by design, and how they're going to extort, and I use that word all the time, more control out of people, unfortunately. Yeah. And the middle class always loses.
Yeah, along the line, or what you're talking about with some people push back and say Bitcoin isn't tangible. Obviously, that's true, but neither is the dollar. Really, and so you have to look.
I'm so happy you said that, because I get in that same argument. You don't know. You probably get the same thing as me.
But
they don't get it. They think the dollar is real. They think it's maybe the paper ones, but that's a fraction of the currency that's out there right now. It's a fraction of it. Most of it is digital. It doesn't exist. It's not on the elemental chart.
So small, it's irrelevant. What I look for in a currency is the utility. Or in a money, what is the utility? And it is true that Bitcoin isn't money yet. And I don't know if it'll go to a million, if it'll go down to 10,000. But for me, the true utility in Bitcoin as it is right now is that it allows you to take a lot of purchasing power across a border. And, I don't know if you saw it, but I did this thing in Argentina where I tried to drive across the whole country using nothing but gold, silver, and Bitcoin.
That's awesome. I heard about it. I didn't see it, but I heard about it.
And you think about it, because I was trying to transact outside of the system. And you think about it, and you're like, okay, if I actually had to go to Argentina, I had to get out of Dodge. That was the plan B. How do I take $250,000 worth of purchasing power in gold? And without report, outside of the system. I'm not encouraging people to do anything illegal, but it's just a thought experiment. And silver is impossible to take that much, but Bitcoin is very, very easy. And so I think that in and of itself gives it tremendous, tremendous utility, just like there's some things with the dollar that give it a lot of utility, which is one of the reasons why it remains the global reserve currency. When you're talking about commodities, though, the first thing that I thought about is one of my favorite books from Jim Rogers, which came out in the early 2000s, just after the dot-com bust. It was called Hot Commodities. And we remember the dot-com bust, which was what they call a balance sheet recession, which is just really, the economy isn't kind of sputtering along, but you just have asset prices go down huge, which is maybe what we'll see in 2025 or 26. But then in 2002, 3, that's when you saw commodities just go parabolic. So I wonder if, we're saying that money has to go somewhere from selling. Now, a lot of it just gets eviscerated because it's just paper wealth, but there is some, money coming out of the stock market, the NASDAQ, let's say the dot-com bust, pets.com, and they're taking that. They say, what do I do now? Don't want to go into treasuries. I'll go into oil, or I'll go into, energy or soft commodities, something like that. So my point there is we could get a repeat of the early 2000s. And I do think that we have moved into another commodity super cycle. So what are your thoughts on that?
100%. That's exactly where we're going to go. There's no doubt in my mind at all. I've been telling people this for, it seems like 1,000 years. We're going to end up into a massive commodity super cycle. I've been telling people to gain exposure to commodities. And if you had to pick one, I would say it would be silver, honestly. Okay. You have it in your hand. I get it. A lot of people who follow my work, I don't know about the ones that follow yours, they're into holding it. They want tangible things. This is in my hand. I can hold on to this, it's mine. Kind of like that. And I think that's for the average guy, the average girl out there, I think that's probably the best bet. And in small denominations, they'll go out there and buy 100-ounce bars of silver. It's going to be very difficult. But as a wealth preservation, I think that's really the right thing to do. But obviously, this goes way, way beyond that, man. It goes to the fact that, man, we're gonna, in my view, and maybe I'm wrong, and I don't know. I'm always about.
I always say there are no certainties, only probabilities.
Yeah, we gotta realize the system is bringing us down deliberately, at least in my opinion. And we need to realize that we're not each other's enemies. We need to make the right connections here. That we're a conquered society. We've been divided, unfortunately, and that's this narrative that goes back since forever. I know this is a wealth issue, but to me, it's way bigger than that. So anyway. That's kind of my thought, but you're right, 100%. That's where we're going to go. We're going to see another commodity super cycle on a massive scale. It's just too obvious to me.
From a standpoint of society, well, let's focus on the middle class, the real economy. Set aside asset prices in the stock market for a moment.
Yeah.
Do you think that Trump and Doge and everything that's going on there at a federal level, if that's going to move the needle for the average Joe and Jane, as far as their purchasing power, their standard of living?
No, I don't believe at all. There's not enough. There's not. I mean, the system. What we're going to see is a lot more debt. Unfortunately, all this though. We found this. We found that. We found. Well, first of all, look, man. I want to see. I'm not saying it's not happening. I know it is, but I want to see proof. I want to see who's responsible. I want to see those people held to account, and then I want to see if we can claw back some of that stuff over there. So, but in the grand scheme of things, there's no way to stop more debts and deficits and currency devaluation, at least at this particular time. There's nothing standing in its way I don't think the regular guy, maybe it feels emotionally good to these people to hear about. I want to see a forensic audit done. You're not going to get a forensic audit done in a day, in a week, or even a month. But with hearing about all this stuff that they're finding, look, man, I don't want to burst anybody's bubble, but I don't believe any of it, I'll be honest with you. I know it's happening, but I want to see who's responsible for this. I want to see action taken, not some flunky down here. I want to see some upper echelon person being held to account. You think that's going to happen? Never does. And I want to see this being taken over to the banks, these banks that are being massively deregulated. Why isn't anyone talking about these institutions that have been caught red-handed committing in-our-face fraud for decades? Why isn't Doge looking into that? Maybe we should be looking into that too. But I don't think that's going to happen. I really just don't. And this whole issue with Fort Knox, whether the gold is there or not, maybe the gold is there, and they're going to tell us it's not there because we're all figuring out how they're going to divvy it up. I've been hearing a lot of talk about that too. So we'll see how this plays. Oh, look, man, it's the 1% and 2%ers, the overlords, who they think they are. They think they're all entitled over all of us here. Well, you know what? It's time for the people to rise up. And are they going to? I doubt it. They let the people, if history is any guide, they let themselves be destroyed, and they always act too late, unfortunately.
Yeah. That is unfortunate. You know, I look at that two ways. Number one, it is, I look at it during, we'll call it the cerveza sickness, when the governments were locking people in a cage and telling them that they couldn't go outside and walk their dog. And I know a lot of people that watch my channel and watch your channel are gun rights advocates, let's say. And I think they're gun right advocates for the right reasons. And that's that you want to have a society that can push back against a tyrannical government. But can you even imagine a time when the American government, the federal government, was more tyrannical than during COVID? I mean, if you're going to stand up to a government, a tyrannical government, what are you waiting for? Like if 2020 isn't going to do it, what is? Right? I mean, they literally locked you in a cage. They wouldn't let you go outside, walk on the beach. They wouldn't let you open your business. They wouldn't let you take your kid to school. Yeah. So if you didn't stand up then with your gun or whatever it is, and again, I'm not condoning violence, but if you didn't do it then or as a society, do you think that we're really going to do it in the future? No. But then on the flip side of that, I look at what happened with the truckers in Canada, and they did stand up. Absolutely. And that small minority, that vocal minority, really made a huge, huge difference. And I remember because I was covering it every single day. I think that, when they were really, when Trudeau was coming out, he's having all those problems. He didn't know what to do. He's trying to, categorize them as racist and all this nonsense. And then just about a week later, Russia invaded Ukraine, which I thought was very, weird timing, let's say. And then that completely took the heat off of Trudeau. And then the trucker movement kind of fizzled out, right? Yeah. But if it wasn't for that, I think they did move. They made big changes, that's for sure. But I think that movement would have gone global, and that gives me a lot of hope. So, what do you think about that? I mean, do you think that it could get so bad in the United States again, where we have our own trucker movement, and that forces the politicians, the central planners, the authoritarians to do what is needed?
I'll tell you what I see going on here, unfortunately. They're creating more dependency on the current system. People are willing slaves to the current system, and they don't want to speak out against it or take action against it because now it's the system that is supporting them. And they feel if they get up and they stand up about these things, and we've seen these kind of things happen before. Occupy Wall Street was one which I said would fail. And I got ridiculed, of course, and told I was going to be wrong. But no, I wasn't wrong. These kind of things do come up. And there are usually, things like that do start off as a minority. It's just as sometimes they grow. But generally, they tend to fizzle out, unfortunately. We need something much, much bigger. I've been telling people we need a rebellion. We need a revolution for the longest time. And I just, again, because of the dependency that's being created on the system, it's very difficult for people to do that now. With people can't get by here, personal debt skyrocketing along with the world debt. At the same time, people don't know what to do with themselves. They're worried about how they're going to make ends meet, feed their children, and everything else here. They can't focus on these things, unfortunately. That's why I've been saying we're a conquered society. People can't come together on any issues anymore. It's the red versus the blues. It's not like imagine people getting together and actually making a positive difference in the world. Unfortunately, we are conquered, and I mean that. And because we've been conquered, the chances of us actually something real happening are very, very, very low, at least at this point. Maybe when things get so extreme and it's always going to be too late, because when they see that kind of a thing, as you just said, something else will just miraculously occur to distract people, to keep people have a very, very short ability to concentrate on a particular thing. And politicians take advantage of that.
Right.
They realize they can just throw another story out there through the mainstream media, and that's what people are going to look at. They're going to forget all about this. And I think that's why, like, I talk a lot and I try to remind people about what is going on underneath. The people don't really understand what's happening here with the banks being deregulated and all this stuff. And this just came out today, more deregulation via executive order. Not just the banks, but other institutions here. We're not going to see any regulation at all. And I think there should be parameters. I believe in the free market, but again, I don't think this is going to help the regular guy or the regular girl. It's going to help the fat cats, the 1 or 2%ers, of course. And that's what we're going to see, unfortunately.
So you think we in the United States, it would have to get as bad as, let's just say, Argentina got, in order for there to be a true Malay that would come in? And I know there's people like to think that Donald Trump is just like Malay, but I mean, maybe philosophically, okay, but I don't think he's as extreme. Malay is, I think, doing the things that had to be done in order to make that dramatic change. And whether Donald Trump will do the same things is yet to be seen. He's done some great things, I think, with Doge and with Musk and whatnot, but it's not as extreme. It's not the needed changes in totality that we've seen in Argentina. And I think what you're saying is that it just needs, unfortunately, to get a whole hell of a lot worse in the United States, to where people forget the tribalism. They come together and then really demand that change is made as a unified force.
I wish they would. I wish people they're too soft. People are so soft here. They're the softest here in the United States. People are not willing to stand up for themselves at all. You know, people should be willing to sacrifice pretty much everything to allow there to be positive change, but they're not going to. People have become too self-centered here in the United States. They've been alienated. You really, to try to, again, what did they do during the episode you referred to? We couldn't even look at each other. You had to maintain a distance here. It's all about control, seeing what they could do, what can they get away with. And it's proven that they can do pretty much anything to people, and they know that, and they will weaponize that again. Believe me, there's people who took note of what happened and how it's going to play out. And moving forward, people are just going to, unfortunately, I think, especially here, I don't know what it would take for people. Maybe if they got knocks on their doors and they were being physically thrown out of the house, and I don't even think then either, because we did see that in 2008. Where people were getting physically thrown out of their houses, old women, literally being thrown into the street with nowhere to go. People are sheep. Man. There's not many people who would actually fight, and I mean fight back. They'll do a lot of talking, but they're going to expect someone else to do the fighting for them. Oh, it's going to be Trump is going to fight for me. You got to fight for yourself here. Okay. Yeah. That's really what we need to do. And until we adopt that mentality, things that people are just going to be taken advantage of even more, a lot worse than we're seeing right now.
Yeah, those are good points. I wish there was a silver bullet. I wish there was an easy solution. But as Thomas Sowell says, there really are no solutions. There are only trade-offs at the end of the day. And unfortunately, in the United States, we might have to go through some significant economic hardship in order to come out the other side and build on a stronger foundation. You talk about the American public being almost addicted to their way of life. And when you're saying that, what comes to my mind is asset prices, and that our economy has become completely and totally dependent upon asset prices. And I always use the example or the visual of like a hot air balloon. And I always say in a healthy economy, the economy is the actual balloon and the basket is the stock market or the assets, right? And what we have is just the complete inverse of that, where the balloon is the asset prices and the basket is the economy. So how we know that this is perverse, but how do you can't switch that without the economy going through potentially an economic recession, because asset prices, to your point, would have to come down substantially to get back to where they should be fundamentally. But that means the GDP contracting substantially, which means the standard of living contracting substantially as well.
Mm-hmm. Dude, you nailed it to the wall again. It's 100% true what you're saying. There's no doubt that that's how it's going, and people aren't ready for what's coming, and that really it scares me to think that. Well, not the people that follow our work. I'm going to say that there are a minority of us that understand that and have taken action against it, at least to are able to see it. And in some ways, I think maybe I want more people to hear this kind of stuff, and maybe we can get through to the next guy or the next girl, but people don't want to hear this. The fact of the matter is, people like you and me, and we should have millions and millions and millions of people following our work. I think we're being shadow banned. I really believe that. And you can see that on YouTube in the analytics with regard to views and then impressions. I don't know if you pay any attention to that, but I can actually see when my videos are getting shadow banned. And I'll actually put out this video is getting shadow banned, and all of a sudden people start watching it. So they don't want this stuff out there. They don't want people to think. If you think, you become a direct threat. And they don't want people to think. They want drones. They want people who will literally surrender themselves to the system, or again, put their faith in the wrong place.
Sometimes that's what people want, unfortunately. Sometimes
say that again.
I said, and sometimes, unfortunately, that's what people want.
That is what they want, man. They're surrendering to the system. That's all about the system. Dependency, surrendering to the system, dependency on the system. They want to be taken care of from cradle to grave. A lot of my
board videos as an example. There's a lot of objectives there, but my main objective in those whiteboard videos, especially, is to try to get people to think. It's not necessarily
so easy, bro,
to predict, this or that. What I'll do often is in my mind, I see this dam, right? And there's these cracks in the dam that I want to point out. But a lot of people think that, well, if the dam hasn't burst, then we don't need to worry about the cracks. And I try to highlight those cracks while at the same time get people just to think, not just about that, but to think about other things and incorporate that analysis into their decision-making process. But then when sometimes I'll read the comments, and this isn't, this is only a small minority of the people that watch the videos, but I see in the comments that people, they don't want to watch a whiteboard video and to think about what I'm saying. They just want me to tell them what to think.
Yeah.
And it's sad, but and I think that the George Gammon viewers or the Greg Mannarino viewers, for the most part, would be in the category of people who want to know how to think or that want to think for themselves. I think it's just a small minority that want to be told what to think. But when you zoom out to the American public, I think it's the complete opposite, to your point, where the majority of Americans, they've got to take their kid to school. They're going to the lake this weekend. They're pissed off at their wife. They've got to, go to the 9-to-5 job, and they just don't want to deal with it. They don't want to do any research. They just want the mommy and daddy government just to tell them what to do. And as long as their 401k goes up and their house goes up in price, then we're good to go.
Dude, you're 100% right. And that's maybe when people start to wait, because that's what they always do. They always wonder, well, hold on a minute. When they lose all their assets, their asset prices, whatever it might be, they go, well, hold on a minute. No one told us this. Well, people like you and me have been telling them and warning these people. Yes, there are voices out here that they don't want to listen to because you know what? We're conspiracy theorists. We're making all this stuff up because the government is on our side. And whatever the government does is for our own good. You know that. I mean, that's really, I think, the mentality of many, many, many people, unfortunately. And I'll tell you something. People know there's something wrong by and large. But again, they don't know what to do about it because they're distracted. They're deceived. They're told to look over here. Don't look over there. They got to clear their minds of things and start to ponder things. But the fact of the matter is people are so caught up in their daily routines and struggling right now. Most people are struggling. Most people are struggling. So that's what they're focusing on, the struggle, as opposed to saying, okay, what's the root cause of this problem? What actually is the issue? And then dealing with that. And then they start thinking, okay, well, hold on a minute now. I got a politician who I may or may not like, and maybe they're doing the right thing, maybe they're not doing the wrong thing. And that's, again, it's dependency, unfortunately. But look, man, we gotta act for ourselves. We gotta look for where opportunities are. And I think they're everywhere. It isn't about doom. This isn't about gloom. It's about reality. It's about sitting back and saying, okay, I understand these things that George and Greg are talking about here, but what do I do about it? How do I make the system work for me instead of against me? Because clearly people are getting destroyed. Yeah. And I think the answers are pretty simple. Realize, just look down the line. If we understand that we're existing in a multiple bubble environment, some inverse, and realizing, at least from a wealth standpoint, where they should be putting their cash to work can't be in cash. It's the worst possible place to be. Currency purchasing power losses are going to accelerate. There's just no way out of that moving forward. So you want to at least put your cash into spots where I think there's the most potential for it to not get evaporated. And then with regard to the market, look, I know it's not for everybody. You got to pay attention. This is going to melt down. I don't know when. Could be today, could be tomorrow. But to me, it's all dependent on looking at the debt market, and that's all I do. I don't care about anything else. I just think that's going to dictate, and it's worked for me so far for many, many, many years. And being able to stay ahead of this just by watching the flow of cash through the markets and then paying attention to some other people that are a lot smarter than me, which is pretty much everybody.
Yeah, you and me both. I am optimistic from the standpoint of, I do believe there are answers. There are simple answers to the problems, but unfortunately, they are hard to implement. I think, was it Reagan who said it's simple, but it's not easy?
Sounds about right.
And what I mean by that, look, if you could just shut down the Fed, and again, not easy, but simple. If you could just shut down the Fed and say, okay, you know what? Now the overnight rate is just going to be dictated by the market. And if you want some central planning tool, fine, just make it 50 basis points less than the 2-year Treasury yield, or something like that. Let the market sort these things out. And if the market thinks interest rates should be higher, then fantastic, they're going to go higher. And if they think they should be lower, then they're going to go lower across the entire curve. Yeah. And if you could combine that with a massive deregulation within the United States economy, get rid of the BR. I like what the Doge thing is doing in principle. I think it's shining a light on things that need to have some sunshine, some disinfectant, that's for sure. But at the end of the day, people have to realize that if we're going to increase the standard of living for the average Joe and Jane, you don't do that by giving them more money, because money isn't wealth. We saw that in 2020 and 2021. Where it just, inflation goes up, but your purchasing power decreases. So the net effect is a negative. So what we have to focus on is goods and services. If the United States is able to create, if we have access to more goods and services, then by definition, the standard of living for the middle class will increase. regardless of what incomes are doing, because your purchasing power is going to be going up, very similar to what we saw in the late 1800s. But in order to get to that point, you've got to slash regulation and bureaucracy and red tape and allow the American entrepreneur to do what they do best. And that is pursue their own self-interest. And in doing so, it's the invisible hand of Adam Smith: create more jobs, create more goods and services. But to me, that has to be the priority. And if you could combine those two things, then I would be pretty optimistic, I think, about the future for the United States. Again, it's easy, or it's simple, but it's not easy.
Well, the fact is, we don't have a free market. I think this is what you're talking about. There's no, in any way, shape, or form, do we have a free market, nor do we have a free market economy. With regard to deregulation, I think there must still be parameters, because there are some that look to take advantage of it. We witnessed what happened in the meltdown of 2008, all this stuff. Who bailed it all out? We had to bail the system out. And I think, unfortunately, we'll end up in that same kind of a situation. There must be some kind of parameters, because not everyone's going to play nice. We know that there are certain people that are not going to play nice, especially the investment banks, and we're going to take massive risk, not with their money, but with ours. And that's a problem. And then people get left holding the bag, unfortunately. But look, man, I'm with you on this. But it needs to start at a fundamental level, and that's we the people, man. This is supposed to be about us. It's not supposed to be about the corporations and about their profits and everything. It's all good, well and good. I'm all about that. Okay, but at the same time, it's the people that unfortunately are being taken advantage of, and will continue to be. So we need something dramatic has to happen to maybe wake people up and demand things. But unfortunately, people are going to submit to, let's say, whatever control mechanism they want to throw at them. Okay, stay in your houses, put this over your face. Whatever, it's a society of sheep, especially here in the United States. Like you probably hear from people all over the world. They probably know people all over the world. And, they're like, what's going on over there? Why doesn't anyone have a backbone? Why don't people stand up for themselves? It's just like in other parts of the world, it's not the same. Different mindset than what they've done to us here. They've turned people into sheep, unfortunately. And they're so easily manipulated. They're so easily taken advantage of. And there are some that look to exploit that to the end possible. They don't care if they suck you dry and you're out in the street with nothing. That's why people are in the sheep that they're in right now. Man, look. Yeah. But again, look, I don't want people to come away from this feeling bad. I want people to come out and say, okay, hold on a minute. I either agree or disagree with what we're talking about. And if they agree, what are you going to do about it? Or if you disagree, you're allowed to disagree. People don't have to see things the same way that we do or that anybody else does. I want people to make up their own minds and want them to think. Yeah. Pretty much that's it.
Yeah. And to be clear, I don't know that my position would be to completely deregulate Jamie Dimon. I would prefer to have the deregulation on the average Joe and Jane entrepreneur. That's absolutely what you're talking about, and that we do need. People don't need to be shackled. People should be free. We have to differentiate the financial economy from the real economy. We're not going to become richer as a society if the financial economy continues to explode. That doesn't really create more goods and services.
There may be some who would argue that, but I get your point.
Yeah, it needs to be, in my view, it needs to be.
I agree with you 100%. But man, it's crazy stuff. But I'm glad we got out here to talk for a while, bro. It's been way too long.
Oh, absolutely, buddy. Tell people about where they can find out more about what you do, your website, your YouTube channel, etc.
Oh, man, I'm everywhere. Just Google me. People will find me. YouTube every day, twice a day, believe it or not. And even once on the freaking weekends. I need some time off, man. I really do.
Well, I like the goatee, dude. Last time I saw you.
You're different look. I'm not even wearing a tie anymore, man. I'm stepping out of Babylon. I can't handle it anymore. I'm trying to at least disconnect a little bit from this thing. I tell people, we may live in Babylon, man, but we don't have to be of it. And we could try to make positive difference in the world for everybody, because that's what it's all about.
Well said, my friend. Hey, guys, I'd like to personally invite each and every one of you to attend this year's Rebel Capitalist Live. This is the incredible conference I put on annually that helps you build a bulletproof portfolio. It helps you increase your personal freedom and liberty, and also it helps you increase the size of your network. In other words, you get to meet a lot of like-minded individuals, fellow rebel capitalists. It's in Orlando, May 23rd through the 25th. Past speakers have included people like Robert Kiyosaki, Ron Paul, Peter Schiff, Mike Maloney, Lynn Alden, just to name a few. So to get your tickets ASAP and to find out who is speaking at this year's Rebel Capitalist Live, you can check it out at rebelcapitalistlive.com. And just a little quick insider information, if you get your tickets sooner than later, you can get a discount, because as we get closer and closer to the event, the tickets go up in price. So don't wait. Go to rebelcapitalistlive.com right now and get your tickets, and I will see you in Orlando, May 23rd through the 25th.